Hi, good morning. I'm Mike Doran. I run the Middle East Center here at the Hudson Institute, where I'm also a senior fellow. And joining me today is Noach Hacker, the economics minister at the Israeli embassy here in Washington. He's agreed to come join us and help us understand the economic dimensions of the conflict that just ended. I think we can say it ended. Anyway, welcome, Noah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Sure.
Last time you were here, this is I think the third time that we've had a conversation like this. You gave us a very optimistic scenario about the resilience, an optimistic or uplifting story about the resilience of the Israeli economy in the midst of this war. I was a little skeptical. I don't know if I showed that. I'm not an economics expert, but I'd heard so many stories about how difficult Israel was finding this war economically because it didn't, it isn't built for long wars, Israel. Iran had roped you into a war of attrition. Moody's had downgraded you, and so on. And you said, no, everything is fine. It looks to me like, it looks to me now, with the benefit of hindsight, that you gave us a very accurate assessment of what's going on. So why don't we just start with, do you have anything you want to update us about what happened, and then we'll talk about what's going to happen.
Sure. So thank you very much for having me again. It's a pleasure being here. And I remember that last time I was here was a year after October 7th, and the first thing I talked to you about was what would have happened if you would invest in Israel on October 6th. And I told you would have been 30% up on your investments if you have done that. So if last time we met you would invest in Israeli stock market, now you'll be up about 50%.
Why don't I listen to you?
50%. I'm just saying. Look,
you know why I don't listen to you? I don't have any money to invest anyway.
It's very consistent. So every time we meet, things get better. But I think the real story here is, and there's a story, that what we experienced in this 12-day war with Iran is nothing like we have ever experienced during conflict or during wartime. If I was here before that, like if we had met a couple of weeks ago, I would have talked to you about the fact that even though we're still in more than a year of war, Israel's economy grew in the first quarter of 2025, 3.7% growth in wartime. As you said, people say that Israel can't stand long wars, 3.7%. That's after positive growth in 2024. So when we say we're resilient, we're resilient. And I think the story here is that all that resilience came into action in this 12-day war with Iran. It was like the top of the performance of Israeli resilience through the most intensive war that we had.
I mean, when you say in the 12-day war resilience, are you talking about the resilience of the country as a whole, or are you specifically talking about the economic resilience?
So for sure, the economy is driven by the population, by the country, right? It's not something separate. And it has to do with the Israeli nature. The nature that doesn't stop to deliver no matter what. The nature that even though missiles are falling from Iran, destroying homes, destroying houses, people go to work. People go out. People sit in coffee places. It's not regular character. Israelis are very, very strong and very, very resilient. And I think that's what we're seeing. And I think this time around, what really changed the story is not just us seeing that. Everyone's seeing that. And I think that is what happened differently in this 12 days or a little bit more of war with Iran.
And so you think this is going to translate into the world seeing the resilience, and the world seeing the quality of Israeli technology in action and so on. This is going to translate into investment and growth in the near term or in the long term.
Look, I'll give you some data, some numbers. not a lot, not to like bore everybody here, but some data, just to understand the difference, right? Usually when a significant conflict is started, even in Israel, which is very resilient, the first thing you get is the market's reactions with stocks coming down, the currency loses a little bit of its value, and you get a negative reaction. What we saw in this 12-day war, again, this is not a war with Hamas in Gaza. This is a war with Iran, a significant threat on Israel. Very far away. A lot of uncertainty. We've been seeing the markets continue to go up since day one of this conflict. The shekel, Israeli currency, had the best day since the early 90s on the third or fourth day of war. It's not something...
I missed that. I didn't see that. I didn't know that.
It's not something you can actually say that, no, everything is as usual. No, things didn't get worse. They got better. And I think the basic idea of that is when you take a look at Israel, Israel has been preparing for this kind of scenario for many, many years. It has been preparing on the military side, and it has been preparing on the economic side.
Yeah, October 7th was the war that Israel didn't prepare for, but the war against Hezbollah and the war against Iran was the war you were prepared for.
So how do you prepare for an economic war, right? It's not like you don't build your stocks of ammunition. How do you prepare? You keep your debt to GDP ratio low. For years, we've been keeping it low exactly to make sure that we have enough reserves for this kind of situations. You keep foreign currency reserves high in order to make investors confident that we're able to pay off our debt. And then you create a balanced economy and prepare a lot of plans and contingency plans to see what will happen when the actual war starts and that you're prepared for everything. And I think we saw everything come together in this war, the defense side, the economic side, and the reaction was very fast. Because when everything's prepared, you saw the reaction. The first day of war, the stock market came up, I don't remember how many percents. In this 12 days, Israel's stock market went up 8%, while the other main indexes in the world stay about the same, maybe 2%. So Israel's been outperforming the markets during a war with Iran significantly.
Let's delve into that a little bit. So I noticed, I was looking at the price of oil, and I noticed that when Iran shot ballistic missiles at Al Udeid base, at our base in Qatar, the price of oil immediately went down. What I would have expected is that it would go up. But then when I thought about it a little bit, what I concluded, perhaps incorrectly, but was that the market had already factored in its assumptions about about the disruption of the oil market. It pretty much already decided that the oil market was not going to be affected by the conflict. Once it saw the rockets being fired at Al Udeid, it assumed that this is a replay of what happened after Trump killed Qasem Soleimani, and that this was actually the end game, and this is the worst that it's going to get. And then therefore whatever risk had been priced into the price of oil started to disappear. So, following a similar logic, there was already a lot of the risk was already factored into the market for Israel, and then the war begins, and people see that it's going to be the damage is going to be confined within certain boundaries, and therefore it starts to go up. Am I understanding the psychology of the market correctly?
I think that's a fair assumption. I think what we see is that Israel has been carrying this burden of this Iranian risk on its back, not only in the economy, but also the economy. It's always there. Every rating report prepares you to a war with Iran. Israel's rating can go down, and then you see a war with Iran. Israel, even if not reducing the risk significantly, so then you have this strong economy, and you have no reason to keep that very big threat on the economy. And when you take that away, even you take some of it away, it allows the economy to boom. And it tells investors, look, we were afraid that Israel-Iran war will hurt Israel significantly. And then you see the 12-day war, and you say, well, we're more confident now. And you saw the first days of war, the investors in the Israeli markets were, the biggest investors were foreign investors, which it's exactly opposite than what happens usually. Usually foreign investors take their money out.
So can you give some specific examples of that? Who are the...
No, we did, because of this really interesting story, right? How did it happen? We were all preparing for a negative reaction, like every conflict scenario that intensifies, and then you get a negative reaction. So we were preparing for that, and for me and other economic figures to go out and say, look at the economy. Don't believe what you hear about the risk. Look at the economy, the actual economy, what's happening. And we saw in this conflict that like the message got through before people understood what's going on in the economy. And I think, so what we did is a lot of analyzing in the last week or so, what actually happened in order to learn from it. We learn from mistakes, but we also learn from success, right? So we try to understand what was the market reaction, who exactly invested in Israeli stock markets. And you see that if usually it's like the pension funds seeing this as an opportunity because they're well organized, they have a lot of money. Here you saw it was foreign investors in the first few days, but then it was just private people buying stocks. I have stories of fighter pilots between flights calling their friends, look, what should I buy? Like between flights to Iran. So it's Israel. We're a little crazy, right? But I think we believe in ourselves. Look, this 12-day war, I think, made Israeli more optimistic. Because we were also a little bit worried of what's going to happen, but we saw the Israeli strength, and it gave us a lot of confidence.
So take me back to that. So let's go back to the beginning of the war, or the days before the war. What were you specifically, with your responsibility on economic matters and investment, what were you worried about in the opening days? In addition to all of the normal things that a person's worried about.
So I wasn't informed of the date or the time or all these. That's not.
You just made the number one mistake in Washington, D.C.
No, but I don't want to create the perception that everything goes through me.
No, create it.
No,
you never admit that you're out of the loop.
But no, it's okay. Look, it's okay. So
I've been telling all the Israelis. I've been very upset. This is I rarely get very surprised by events in the Middle East. I was totally shocked by this, and I'm very upset with the Israelis for not giving me a wink or something.
So of course we've been preparing for this. It's not in the date and time, but we've been preparing for this because everybody that looks at the war that we've been having for the last almost 2 years knows that the war is with Iran. So we've been preparing for this, and that's a different war because they have a lot of long-range missiles that can create a lot of damage in Israel, and defense is not 100% foolproof. You do have missiles coming through, so you don't know how to assess the damage. And you can assess it on two levels. You can be on the safe side or you can be on the optimistic side, but you have to prepare yourselves for the negative. You hope for the positive, but you need to prepare for the negative. So we had a lot to do with that, building our...
So the negative, the thing that you were most worried about was lots of civilian casualties from Iranian ballistic missiles.
Civilian casualties, but also the flow of the economy. would be disrupted. And we didn't know how long it's going to take. So there were some concerns, but we understood that if it's going to be short and decisive, there was projections now for what exactly we lost in this 12-day war for the economy. It's fragments of GDP. Not as close as you would imagine for a direct war with Iran with 1,000 missiles being sent to Israel or so. So it's not as close even to our scenarios. It's a good scenario. It was on the table.
You mean the scenarios you had? Let's say you had a catastrophic scenario, a bad scenario, and the least worst.
Yeah.
You're saying that it was better than all of those.
I think it was somewhere in the better or the least worst.
Yeah.
It was somewhere there. Because you can see the results. It's not only us thinking that. It's the investors in Israel that have been preparing also in the back of their minds of this risk. When they saw the war progress, they understood that where this war is going, and I think that's why you really see a new, more confident, optimistic side now when you talk to Israeli economists. But I think it's all Israelis.
So, walk us through it. At which point did you realize at what point in the conflict did you realize it was going to be? So I saw somebody from the Israeli security establishment on, I think the war started on Thursday night, and then I saw somebody on Monday, and he was being guarded in what he was saying, but I noticed that he was kind of floating on air, and also had a lot of time to devote to talking to me rather than doing what he needed. Well, it's the middle of a war. I would have thought he had lots of pressing things. The fact that he had time to talk to me told me that already on day where were we? So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, day 4 of the war, it was clear to him that things were going well. So was that the same for you, or was it the?
So after first day of trade, we talked about it and saw. Well, we said okay.
First day of trade is Sunday.
Sunday in Israel.
Yeah.
First day of trade. We said okay.
So that's day 2 of the war, basically.
Yeah, something's happening, and I'm talking. Here in DC, you don't feel Israel as much as you feel in Israel, right?
Right.
So I've been talking to. The first day is ending. I'm talking to the chief economist and the Israel Securities Authority and the chief economist in the Ministry of Finance, and they're all super optimistic. And I'm like, well, look, first day of trade, let's give it another day. Then second day, as I said, the best day of the shekel since the 90s. Again, stock market up. We've been confident. You build your confidence, you build your optimism. Third day of war, the IDF lets people go back to work. Third day of war.
Oh, that's a big signal then.
Yeah,
to everyone.
And then you're saying, well, now what's going to hold us back? If people can go back to work. And I think that was a very big signal to the markets as well, that we believe in ourselves enough that the IDF lets people go back to work. And the fifth day, I think, I've been speaking to my father. He's an 85-year-old man. He lives in Jerusalem. He said, I can't stay at home anymore. He's going outside. We're talking on the phone. He says, look, I'm stopping here at this coffee place to sit down. Then I'll go to the barber, to the laundry. And I'm like, what? Everything's like
normal.
So, yeah, everything's normal. And that's when missiles are still, there's alarms, people going to shelters. It didn't end after 4 or 5 days. So I think when you see that and you see the understanding in Israel that it's not too much, we can manage it. The thing I say is that Israel doesn't only survive conflict. It grows through the conflict. And I think it gives us a lot of confidence to go forward and push harder and be stronger. One of the things the Israeli Statistic Bureau ran a survey for businesses, how did they work in the 12-day war? High-tech sector, most of the companies worked as usual. War with Iran, missiles falling, destroying buildings, worked as usual. So I think that gives us a lot of confidence in ourselves that nothing can stop us.
And the high-tech sector worked as usual because everybody can just phone in from home? Or
Many of them at work. Many of them at work. Because if you have a shelter in your building, right, then you can go to the shelter. There is enough early warning because the missiles are far away. And you can go to the shelter and you're as safe as you'll be. And people can work anytime. And you know, a lot of our high tech is exports and exports of services. So most of it doesn't need anything, just a sandwich and a coffee and an internet line, and everything works.
So I don't understand this because of the way the Israeli military, the Israeli military is built for short wars. And there's no, because of the reserve system.
Yeah.
And there's no, there was no expectation that Iran would drag you into a long war of attrition. Because really, since October 7th until now, this is an Iranian, as I understand it, this is an Iranian war of attrition, prosecuted through the proxies. And Israel isn't really built for it. And the reservists are from the most productive elements of society, people working age, right? So I don't understand how
it works.
How this story, because this isn't. I understand your point about the debt to GDP ratio and foreign reserves, foreign currency reserves, and so forth as preparing you for this war, But structurally, you're not prepared for this kind of conflict, and yet it worked out. Well, or relatively well, given all of the circumstances. So explain that to me.
So I'll try to explain with personal experience. Okay, just a couple. I have a brother. He's a judge in Israel, and on his weekends he's in reserves. Work days he's at work, weekends in reserves.
Having a brother who's a judge is a good thing to know.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it, so people know I'm connected.
Right.
So, and
you were on that. You're in the loop. That's good.
And my son, maybe I said it before, he's in a math program of one of the universities in Israel.
You did? Yeah.
His teacher is teaching him while being in reserves. And I think, again, it's not sustainable.
I can see the questions. If 3 ballistic missiles leave Tehran at this time and they're traveling at this speed, what time will they hit Tel Aviv?
Maybe. I don't interrupt them in the lesson, but maybe. Yeah. But I think it's not sustainable for the long run, for sure, because people can't stay at that situation forever. But I think this 12-day war is a big step towards ending the war because of this decisive action in Iran. And I think the Israeli economy has shown that we learn to adjust to everything. So on a lot of people, it's hard, but on the economic level, we manage.
So I mean, your point is that a lot of people are able to do their jobs even while they're on reserve duty.
Look, reservists are mostly young people. So a lot of them are students, right? So they're not at work yet. So you don't feel it immediately in the economy. You'll feel it in the future when these guys are going to have to go back to school, and that will postpone their joining the economy. But still, even now, colleges or universities continue. These reserves are staying in school. They didn't leave their degrees. They're still learning. So it's manageable, but it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy, everything's great in that area, but the actual economic effect of it is not that big. And we hope that it won't take too long to come back to regular times.
I'm making the mistake of reading the left-wing Israeli press because they're telling me all the time that the reservists are breaking. It's not, they can't go on, and so I'm not really joking because the Israeli press was full of stories the burden on the reservists was too much, and it was.
It's a big burden, a personal burden, a very big personal burden. The government's doing a lot to help economically, a lot of grants, a lot of assistance to reserves, a lot, really unprecedented in Israel. But still, the personal burden is a personal burden. I don't think Israelis break. That's not how we are built. But I think it's something that we need to manage. It can't be forever, but we're not breaking.
Okay, what if I could make you king for a day, right? And you could. There were things about the Israeli economy that you could adjust or improve in order to meet these circumstances. What would it be? I mean, in other words, I'm asking you. Okay, it's a great story, and I believe you. You've been here 3 times, and you haven't misled us yet, so I believe you. But there must be areas where you think that there really is a weakness that needs to be addressed.
Let's imagine ourselves in October 6th. Okay, and we've been having a conversation about the Israeli economy. We would have talked about different populations in Israel that are less participating in the workforce, for example, okay, or less in different areas of the economy. I think that continues to be a struggle for Israel. I think this war actually created some opportunities there, but it's still something to work on. So if you wanted to imagine like this.
This is one of the most sensitive issues in Israeli politics, so I'm assuming that if I ask you a follow-up question about that, you will dodge it. Am I right? Should we just avoid that?
Maybe, but yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'll just avoid that, unless you have something to say about the whole question, because it's quite interesting. I mean, we're talking, of course, about the ultra-Orthodox, and of course the Arab sector as well. They don't serve in the military, or at least a big chunk of them don't. And these are it's a very quick, fast-growing element of the society. Do you have anything you want to say about that, or should we just avoid it entirely?
I'll just say that there's, again, very good opportunities here that could drive Israel's economy, not only the economy, but especially the economy forward in ways that we have never imagined before, that on October 6th didn't seem possible at all, now are more possible. It's not everything's perfect and 100%, but are more possible now. And I hope we, Israel, know how to take advantage of these opportunities.
Let me talk to you a little bit about. Well, actually, I want to go back to something you said because I didn't understand it. On day 3, I guess it was on Monday of the 12 days war. You said that the shekel had the best day since the 90s. I did not know that. Why? Why would it? Why? There must be some reason behind that. Not just that it was a good day, but one of the best ever.
I think people understood very fast where this war is going. People understood that we're under-evaluated for many reasons. Some of it is geopolitical risk, it's called. That's like the basket with everything's in.
Yeah.
And our geopolitical risk is Iran.
Yeah.
And when you see that happen, you get a correction. And that's what we saw. We got a correction. Then, still, it's getting stronger even now. But you had that correction. And we saw it in the stock markets. And we're seeing it in the currency as well. I think just like you said on the oils, people understood. And then
so they realized that they had overcorrected toward the risk outside.
Yeah, I think people understood very fast, or like investors understood very fast. It's hard to predict currencies, right? There's many things influencing the currency rate. But when I think as the war progressed, you understood a lot of scenarios are not relevant, and those are the worst scenarios. And when you start taking them out, you got the correction. Now, if it's better this way or that way, that's a different question. But the worst scenarios went out very fast.
Let me ask you a little bit about. I don't know if this is if you're the appropriate address for this question, but let me ask you anyway. Israel's defense industrial base.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is clearly a problem that was highlighted by this war is the absence of Arrow 3 interceptors. So, or the relative lack of Arrow 3 interceptors. And so I know it's a highly specific thing, but I was in another country during the war, and people who were very well connected to the defense establishment in this country explained to me that Israel was going to lose the war because, according to this analysis, which I think they were probably getting from the Iranians directly, Iran was going to run through your magazine of Arrow 3 interceptors. And they had such a large stockpile of medium-range ballistic missiles that they could do it. So the war was kind of a race. You were running a sprint to try to get Iran to call a ceasefire and destroy the nuclear and the missile capabilities. And they were trying to run a marathon to run you through your magazine. Okay, you won the sprint. It became a sprint rather than a marathon. Not if you listen to Khamenei. Khamenei says he won. Okay, but you won the sprint. But nonetheless, they did focus in on something. They weren't able to exploit it like they thought they could. But I think they did focus in on a real weakness, which is it's a structural weakness, and it's not one that's easily addressed, which is the lack of industrial capability. Defense industrial capability, simply because you are a high-tech nation, and an adversary that's throwing not particularly high-tech, but throwing a lot of metal at you. And you have to spend a lot of money to knock it out of the air, and a lot of weaponry. So, how do you see Israel adjusting to that disability or weakness in the future?
So there's a couple of ways to answer the question, but the first one I have to mention is that Israel is not alone. We saw it in this war. We have our strongest friend, the United States, standing beside us. And we saw it in the defense part, the missile defense part, from the start. I think even rating companies that rate Israel mention the fact that the U.S. Joined the war as a positive to show the Israeli strength because our close ally, the United States. So that's the first answer, right? We're not alone. We're the United States.
But if I'm an Israeli planner, I can't,
So
you
I'm
can't tell. Not every American loves you.
That's one answer. But the other answer is the missile. First of all, I don't want to get into the issues how many arrows we did have.
No.
The Iranians want to tell a story. They can tell any story they want.
But look. I understand, and I'm not asking you to tell any secrets. This is a global problem. The newspapers are full of reports that the American Patriot missiles and the American interceptors, the stocks are low. We just had the whole story about the United States withholding this from Ukraine because of the lack of supplies and so on and so forth. So it's clear their strategy is built on this, and everyone in the West has a problem with this. Everyone.
So, first of all, let's talk about the threat, right? You keep your defense against the threat. The threat went down significantly, not by 2 missiles. Some of it because we destroyed those missiles, because we had air dominance in Iran. Some of it because they shot their ammunition.
Right.
But so the threat went down significantly. Second, Israel industrial base is working very hard. Very hard. I had a conversation with the CEO of Israeli AIA, right? IAI, I think, sorry. And IAI. And he was in my office like a week before the war started, 2 weeks.
And this is Yuval Steinitz?
No, he's
No,
the chairman.
Okay.
This is Boz. Look, never mind. He told me how they're expanding production very significantly, let's say. And now in Israel, a lot of the conversation is how to balance defense budgets against other budgets, because there's no end to
Threats.
defense spending.
Yeah.
Okay, so you need to manage it. I think we're in a good place. I think we're gonna see in the near future defense expenditure in Israel go up. Some of it is because what you say, rebuilding stocks or even deciding on new levels of stock. But I don't think we're at some kind of crisis level or something.
That's not crisis,
that's not where we are.
But if I were the king, I would want the thing that would make me, when I look at the adversary's strategy, the thing that, and I see the dependence of Israel on the United States, which you presented it as a very positive thing, but and it is a positive thing, and the cooperation is fantastic. This is actually the first time Israel and the United States have gone to war together. I think it's wonderful. I think it makes us both stronger. But if I were a planner, I would say, I want to be in a position to, if I have to go to war without the United States, I want to be able to do it. And that lack of an industrial base, because Israel's not an industrial country, right? It's a high-tech country.
I don't know. It's a high-tech country, but we do have defense industries.
I know you have
significant ones.
All of us, the United States too. I mean, we don't. All of North Korea produces more artillery shells in a year than all of the Western European countries combined. That's amazing, right? So this is a problem.
Israel, we don't think like regular nations. We have our own way of thinking. It's not the only way to deal with missiles with interceptors. Okay, we have a lot of options, and we manage them. We balance them. We want to keep our economy growing. We want to keep our citizens getting the right services they need. So it's a balance. I believe that after this kind of war, we'll see a different balance than we were before. We'll see a different balance. But I'm not seeing like a change that will create a very, very new reality. We'll see a change. We'll invest more in those kinds of things, and there will be more Israeli production on defense for sure. But you need to understand, on the other hand, the threat has gone down. We've shown our abilities. I think we have shown that you can take the missiles out before they're shot at you. I'm not saying depend on it.
That was amazing. Actually.
I'm not saying depend on it, but and of course, F-35s cost a lot of money, and ammunition cost a lot of money. But we need to balance everything. And
if I were Donald Trump, I would say right now, this is the point where I'd say yes, but it is the best system in the world, and it's really worth the money. It's a good deal you're getting.
I think we have shown the systems in Iran and how they work. And I think, as you said, U.S. and Israeli cooperation on industrial defense or fighting together, as you mentioned, it showed the world that we're in a very good place.
I thought you were going to answer this question differently.
Okay.
Because I'll give you another opportunity.
Go for it.
Because I thought you were going to say, it wouldn't hurt us to grow in that area. I thought you'd say, yeah, there's no real problem with the Arrow 3, but it wouldn't help, it wouldn't hurt to grow in that area. But the effectiveness of our systems was showcased by this war, and the external demand for our systems is going to be such that it's going to be relatively easy for us to expand, because it won't be just public expenditure. We're going to have greater sales. But I mean, it is true, isn't it, that you just showcased amazing capabilities that are going to be attractive to buyers?
So first of all, good answer. I think every year now of this war has been a record year of defense exports for Israel. We're seeing the increased demand for defense products in Europe. Of course, Israel is going to benefit from a lot of it. we've seen the abilities of the Israeli army or Israeli systems in offense and defense. And for sure, we're already seeing the interest in Israeli defense systems. So that's already happening. Okay? The answer you got from me is an answer from a Minister of Finance, man, that knows the discussion in Israel now is exactly that balance. How do we not get back to the situation where we were after the 73 war, after Yom Kippur War, when we invested too much in military capabilities and it took our economy way back? I think now we need to manage that.
That's very interesting.
And see how we can go through it with keeping our capabilities and improving them, but still helping our private sector.
So tell us this story. This is not familiar to me, about the overreaction to the surprise in 73.
Yeah.
And this is on everybody's mind?
Mostly economists, right? There was a very big overreaction. There were a lot of books written about the last decade on the Israeli economy, which actually led to a very not good place, right? But
tell us the story of the last decade in just a few sentences.
It was, I think, expenditure on defense got to places of like 60, 70% of GDP on defense.
60 or 70%?
Yeah, a lot. And I think what we see now,
can that be true?
I think so. Look, Israel wasn't a high-tech country in the 70s, right? Or the 80s. But I think what we see now is not even close to that. But we do want to manage. Look, we want to let the private sector succeed. We don't want to.
So what happened in the last decade? Do people see that there was hyperinflation back then? Was there not?
There was hyperinflation.
Was that related? I don't. You have to.
We had
you're talking
very
to an
big help.
Economic illiterate. So
we had a team coming in from the World Bank and the IMF helping Israel rebalance the economy. There was a lot of privatization after that. Our whole economy changed. Our whole economy changed after that decade. So I think now we're not close to that place. We're way stronger, but still we want to balance our economy. We don't want to invest everything only in one thing. We want to make sure that everything is balanced. I think we're in that position. As I said, the debt to GDP ratio, the low ratio, allows us a little bit of room to adjust, but we need to balance our budget very fast.
I'll tell you, I know how if I were an Israeli, I know exactly how I would feel in hearing you say that, and I would be worried. And I'll tell you why. And then I'd be interested in getting your reaction. Because I think October 7th showcased a real weakness in the small, smart army concept. Because on October 7th, there were no ground forces available, right? And where was the military? But then since the exploding beepers against Hezbollah, the success against Hezbollah, and then the incredible success of the how do we say Am Kalavi in the
Rising Lion.
Rising Lion?
Yeah.
Where's the Am in Rising Lion?
It doesn't sound as well as
okay, Rising Lion. In Operation, we say Operation Rising Lion, and Operation Rising Lion went so incredibly well, and it was all Air Force and intelligence driven. So there's been kind of a vindication in the latter part of the war. There's a vindication of the small, smart army. And that would worry me because I know myself, just the way I'm built psychologically, I would be worried about the deficiency that was demonstrated on October 7th. And I would want investment that was going to make up for that deficit.
So I don't know what, like October 7th, all the research on that and what exactly happened, it's something in Israel that hasn't been concluded yet. So
according to me, we need ground forces.
Okay, I don't want to talk about it, but it may be, maybe there's a need of a change of balance, maybe. We'll see. But that change of balance, which I'm sure defense expenses in Israel is going to go up from about 4% to GDP to maybe 6% GDP, that could happen. But we need to manage it like that. And we need to make sure that it doesn't disrupt our fiscal stability, our fiscal policy. And that's our focus now. Because, war has costs, civilian costs as well. Right. It's not only defense costs. So I'm not saying we're not going to spend more on defense. We are. But it's going to be manageable. We need to show our investors that we're very, very strict about our policies, and we are managing our fiscal policy as well as our defense needs. And I think that's what we're going to see in the next coming years. After this war, we need to rebalance. We are already seeing that. In Israel, Israel's deficit from the beginning of 2025 till now is half that it was in the same period in 2024. So we're working on Wait, can you say that again? If you take the deficit of the Israeli budget from January to now, from 2025, it's about half that it was in 2024 for the first half.
How's that possible?
First of all, the economy grew by 3.7%, which allowed a lot more income. Income of Israel went up 16 or 17%. The government income, 16, 17% in the beginning of this 6 months in 2025. Expense went up, but less, 2%. So that's how you manage the deficit.
That alone is an amazing story, really, isn't it?
So I'm saying, we're aware of our needs, we are aware of our expense needs, but we're looking at our budget, balancing it, and keeping our investors happy that they know everything is managed. We're continuing to grow. We're continuing to do it in a very organized and balanced way. And I think you see the results in the actual investments in Israel that are still coming in because people believe in the Israeli economy and the Israeli system.
So when you look now, projecting for the next year or two, what is it that you want to make predictions for us and tell us where to invest?
I'm not giving predictions for the future. I'm just saying what would happen if you would invest last time.
What are you seeing today that gives you confidence? Where are you expecting to see the greatest growth?
Look, we haven't talked about it yet, but the regional opportunities that this 12-day war actually creates with other countries becoming more economically active with Israel, that could lead to a lot of prosperity for the region and, of course, for the Israeli economy. That's something that could really make a change, a long-lasting change. We're hoping for that. I think as I said, the internal issues in Israel, some optimistic views there, even if only some of it will be actually realized, that's a very good signal for the Israeli economy. And hopefully an end to the war at some point that can allow those reserves, those hundreds of thousands of reserves, to go back to their lives. And of course, the hostages coming back to their homes.
I'll turn over to the audience here for some questions. Is there something I should have asked you that I didn't ask?
No, you're good.
Yeah? Are you sure? Yeah? Okay. All right. Ken, this is one of the two last real reporters in the world.
Hello, thank you. Ken Moriyasu from Nikkei Asia of Japan. So fascinating discussion, especially about the debt to GDP ratio. Israel is 69%, Japan is 250%. So this gave me shivers down my spine. Very quickly, what are the worst case scenarios that you envision by having a huge debt? And secondly, on a totally different topic, I want to talk about Turkey. The discussion today was that Israel was not prepared for October 7th, but it was prepared for Iran. How does Turkey fit into that?
So, again, on the economic side, I'll get to Turkey. First of all, I think it was the Monday, the third day of the war, fourth day of the war, I don't know how to count it. Israel issued out its regular bonds issuance of Mondays. We issue out bonds every Monday to fund our debt. And we didn't know exactly what to expect, but we had demand more than 4 times of the amount that we were asking for. In the middle of the war with Iran, after a year and so of war. So I think that was a great signal that we got from the markets that really gave us the ability to think, if you're saying what's the worst scenario, that's not the worst scenario, right? That's not what you would expect in the worst scenario. You would expect some kind of change in demand, maybe interest going up on Israel bonds, like something to disturb the regular work of funding the Israeli budget. And we didn't see that, almost like in the beginning. So I think that gave us a lot of confidence. On the Turkey side, look, we didn't expect like the Turkey boycott on Israel's economy. But when we actually had to deal with it, we understood that the effects of it are not that significant. And we saw that with all goods from Turkey being replaced by other places in the world without prices going up. There's a very big report on it of the Central Bank of Israel that measures what happened to every product, and in every product did prices go up or not. We're seeing that the ability for the Israeli economy, it's not government, it's the private sector. The ability to find substitutes around the world was very, very good.
There's no substitute for me flying to Israel through Istanbul and going to the, especially when I go business class, and I go in the business class lounge of Turkish Airlines, which is the place where I intend to retire, right? And this has been taken away from me. And so once again, when you say there's been no effect, there's not enough what about Doran and what about the effect on him?
We'll try to think about that more. And
yeah, thank you. Ken, did we get all your questions then? Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Gavin Harris. I'm just wondering, you talked about the significant foreign investment in Israel after the war, and I'm wondering, well, who is it that's significantly interested in investing in Israel directly after the war? Is it the typical customers like U.S. and U.K., or is it India? Or I'm most interested, what are the Arab states thinking about the future?
So I can tell you that just going in here, I just checked with my research guy in Israel, and we have some early data of the first quarter who's investing. It's about 70% is American investment. So most of the investment.
Is that normal? Is that?
Yeah, that's about the normal share. Just this Sunday, NVIDIA announced a new operation in Israel, the biggest outside the U.S. Right? So you have those companies continue to invest in Israel. I don't know about the investments from the Arab countries, but if you look at trade with the Abraham Accords countries, you see that 2024 was a record year. A year of war with Iran, with Gaza, all the fronts, a record year with trade with Abraham Accord countries. So what I see is just everything continuing on its path, and we don't see any disruptions in that.
Thanks. Hi, John Plummer. So if I break my car window and I spend $20 repairing it, GDP technically goes up $20. And so you read off statistic about Israel's economic growth after October 7th. And I'm just wondering, how much of that do you think is because of repairs afterwards?
So that's a nice example. I give a different example, a more realistic one. When a missile from Iran falls on a 2-story building in Tel Aviv, which is, I think, the maybe most expensive country in the world to buy real estate. We're not going to build a 2-story building to replace that 2-story building, right? We're going to build a 60-story building to replace it. And the economic activity that creates, it's way, way, way more than just fixing the window. It's like a whole new economy created from that. But that's not most of what's happening in Israel. Most of it is just, Israel is a very export economic-minded country. Most of it is global demand. We do see in the defense side a lot of new startups coming up through this war with different abilities, the laser, for example, right? So now we'll see bigger demands or or more products, but it's not. There will be a lot of economic activity because of what you mentioned, but it's not the biggest part of Israeli growth.
So what you're saying is that the Ayatollah Khamenei is provided the best solution for Israeli red tape and getting past all of those.
Like this is filmed, so I'm trying to hold back on things, but I did hear from some people that wanted to ask if we can connect them to the person who's directing the Iranian missiles, because it will cut a lot of Israeli bureaucracy and then allow them to build their new homes.
You're too young. You don't remember that song, Tov Liot Kablan, do you?
I don't know the song, but it sounds good.
Yeah, it is. It's always good to be a builder. Okay, any more questions? If not, I think we'll bring this to an end, unless you think that is there anything else that you want to tell us?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, well, so please join me in thanking, oh, sorry, do we have a question? Yeah, we have one more question.
Yes, I actually had one question. My name's Darcy Weber, and I'm interning for the Middle East Center. I know that Syria and Israel have been engaging in negotiations to potentially reach a peace deal. And I'm wondering if maybe you see, maybe further down the line, any potential for economic cooperation between the two countries, and if so, what that might look like.
Oh, interesting.
So I almost didn't say this in this conversation, right?
No,
but just to talk about the economic side of it, we're talking about 20 million customers, let's call it, that can create economic activity. We're talking about a country in need of investments, in need in infrastructure, and Israel tech can really drive economic activity in the region. So I think there's a lot to benefit from economic activity between all neighboring countries, and of course Israel and its neighboring countries. But I'm not gonna. I can't answer.
He's dodging it.
More than
okay. Well, please, thank you for what was otherwise a very informative conversation. Please join me in thanking Noach Hacker.
Thank you.